Good morning. It feels so strange to do the lectures this way. So please forgive any starts and stops that I make, any awkwardness as well. For today's lesson, you should have your calculator, of course a pencil, and you should have downloaded and printed two documents, the notes and the worksheet. Geometry, please just disregard that it says algebra at the top. For this lesson, all of you will be doing the same thing, actually for this entire topic. Okay, let's get started. Please remember that if I go through this too fast, you can pause at any time, and of course you can always replay, rewind, do whatever is necessary. So this first part should be a review. We're going to talk about the measures of central tendency. Those describe the distribution of data. And they are mean, median, and mode. I did forget to mention that if you do not have access to a printer, you can always just write the notes on notebook paper, jotting down as much or as little as you need in order to be successful with this topic. So the first thing we're going to do is 4 words: mean, median, mode, and range. You've had these before. Remember that the mean, is the average. And all you do is you add them up and then you divide by the number of them. So if you have 5 numbers, you'll add all 5 of them up, and then at the end, after you have the total, divide by 5 to get the mean or the average. The median is the middle. Remember, those must be in order. Typically, I do smallest to biggest, but it does not matter. That middle, another name for it is going to be Q2 or quartile 2. That looks like a Z, but it's a 2. Now, when there's an odd number of numbers, the middle is very easy to find. If there's an even number, then you have to take the 2 that are in the middle and average them. The mode, I've always talked about it as being the most. It is the one that appears the most times. So if no number repeats, it will have no mode. If there's clearly one number that is repeated the most number of times, it will have one mode. However, if it's a tie for the most, it can have many modes, 2 or more. The range of the data is the biggest value minus the smallest value. So far, these are skills that you have practiced in 5th or 6th grade. So let's just do a really quick review. These are the numbers that represent snakes at a zoo and how long they are. The first thing I want you to do is take those numbers and put them in order, 37 being the smallest. Take a minute to do that. Feel free to pause the video while you're doing that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and write them down myself. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Should have 12 values. So the middle will be between the 6th and the 7th number. So the middle will be right here. Okay, this is actually jumping ahead to example 2. So the middle is between 48 and 50, which is 49. Now that one was pretty obvious. If it's not, remember you would take 48 plus 50 and you would get a value of 98 and divide it by 2, and that will give you the 49. Now, for example 1, for the mean, for the average, take all those values, all 12 of them, add them up, and write that value down, and divide it by 12. Pause the video while you do that. The sum was 600, and when you divide it by 12, you will get an average or a mean of 50. Now in this set of data, you have 3 48s. So the 48 appears the most times. 48 is the mode. For the range, you'll take the longest snake, 65, and subtract by the smallest, 37, for a range of 28. The next one is exactly done the same way. Here, the information is given in a table. It's got 7 days in the week, and you want to find the measures of central tendency along with the range. I would pause the video at this point and go ahead and answer examples 5 through 8. Okay, now you should have all of those finished. The first thing I'm going to do is put the numbers in order. I find it a good practice to check them off as you write them. You should have got a total of 602 divided by the 7 values, giving you a mean or an average of 86. The middle value will be this one right here. 85 is the median. The mode is the most often occurring. Notice that none of them repeat, so there is no mode. The range will be the hottest day minus the coolest day for a range of 11. That should all be a review. We did a little bit of the quartiles on the back of notes, or the second page of the notes, one day just before spring break, but let's review them. The lower extreme of a set of data is always your smallest value. So of course that means the upper extreme is the largest value. Now you're going to take your data and find the median, and the median, remember, is Q2 or quartile 2. The lower quartile of the data, known as Q1, is the median of the lower half, while the upper quartile, or Q3, is the median of the upper half. To get the interquartile range, remember range is subtraction, the biggest minus the smallest. Here we are doing the biggest quartile, Q3, and minusing the smallest quartile, Q1. And then we review a box and whiskers plot. It shows the range of the data amongst the quartiles. Remember, the prefix quart means 4. You've taken the data and divided it into 4 sections. This feels kind of weird because we only have 3 quartiles. We actually have a 4th quartile as well, just being the upper half of the data. All right, on example 9, I already put the test scores in order to make it easy. Please find quartile 2, or the middle. Okay, that should be 90, because that leaves you 6 values below it and 6 values above it. That is quartile 2, or 90. The lower extreme, remember, is the smallest value, which is 70. The upper extreme, remember, is the largest value, or 100. I do want you now to find Q1 and Q3. So for Q1, it's the middle of the lower half. So of these 6, the middle would be right here between 75 and 78. So you will need to add those together and then divide by 2. Q1 should be 76.5. Q3 is the median of the upper half. So for the top 6, the middle will be here between 95 and 95, which is obviously 95. The interquartile range is the third one minus the first one. So you would take 95 and subtract 76.5 to get an interquartile range of 18.5. Now we're ready to make a box and whiskers plot. In order to do that, we need a number line for our guideline. Notice our values go between 70 and 100. So I'm going to choose to count by 5s, and I'm going to go ahead and start on maybe 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95. Okay, feel free to pause this video if you need to while you make your number line. Now we're going to put bars for each of the quartiles. The first quartile of 76.5 is going to be right about here. The second at 90, right about here. And the last one at 95. Take those 3 bars and make a box. You also want to list the values. You're going to make a whisker to the lower extreme and to the upper extreme. The smallest was 70. Place a point there and connect it. The highest was 100. Place a point there and connect it. Now, remember that the median is separating our data into 2 pieces. Each piece is 50% of the data, and then since these are each a portion equally as well, you should have 4 equal sections of data. The picture doesn't show 4 equal sections, but the data does. Each section is 25% of the data. So if I asked you how many test scores, what percentage were scores less than 90%, you would say 50% of the scores were less than 90. If I asked you how many scores were above 95, you would say 25% of them. All right, moving on to stem and leaf plots. Stem and leaf plots are a way of displaying data. It's just a nice way to organize. It's a little chart with 1 column for the stem and 1 column for the leaf. The stem will be the tens digits of the data. In this case, there's 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s. So my stems are 7, 8, 9, and 10 for 70, 80, 90, and 100. Now I'm going to take each value and put the leafs, or the ones digits. So there are 2 70s, so 70, 70. A 75, 78. I have an 80, 80, an 88, 2 90s, 3 95, so 95, 95, there's a 98, and there's a single 100. Pause the video if you need to catch up on your stem and leaf plot. Histogram is the next thing. It looks like a bar graph. It's a way of grouping data by intervals. Like if I was graphing this data as the teacher and I wanted to know how many 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s I got, those would be my intervals. So we're going to make a bar graph. The horizontal axis will be the scores. The vertical axis will be the number of tests. And it's the number of tests that get that score. So I don't have any information for scores below 70, but I do know that from 70 to 79 I have scores. From 80 to 89 I have scores. From 90 to 99 I have scores. And then I did have a score that was 100. I didn't put the 100 here because that would put more values in this section than any other. So I am going to make a section from 100 to 110, which is really only going to contain the values of 100 unless there were bonus points. The most scores we had were in the 90s. There were 6 of those. So on this side, I need to make sure my axis goes at least up to 6. You could indeed go beyond that as well. My first bar for the 70s shows there are 4 scores, so my bar will go up to the 4. Now, a histogram does not have space between the bars. A bar graph does. There are 2 scores in the 80s. Remember, 6 scores in the 90s, and only a single 100. And that's a histogram. Now you're ready to stop the video and work on the assignment. Notice the first portion of the assignment is just the vocabulary. Just kind of try to write as many of these as you can without referring to your notes. Of course, do go back if you need to. Once you've completed your homework, feel free to check it using the next video.